This is 118
Why
proof.
would anybody do this?
Fall apart at the most tender.
It tastes like I just got pepper sprayed by a cop. No more questions. Are we done?
Hey guys, we're on. What an intro video. That's a first for those of y'all who've been doing these events with us. You've never seen such high production. That was incredible. All right, guys, doing an intro video like that throws everything off. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a technical difficulty already. Hey, can I get someone to mute this monitor? Sorry guys, we're gonna have a quick disruption. Just mute it at the top, the button at the very top. Sorry, guys. All right, so we're coming live from a unique spot. We've done a lot of events. Many of y'all have done these with us this entire time, and I appreciate y'all coming back and enjoying the tech talk we do, followed by something creative and fun. Today, y'all can tell we're outdoors in Houston. Maybe not the smartest idea. I'm sweating like crazy. If y'all have done the 44 Farms events with us before, maybe you've seen me sweating on camera before. We'll get through it together, I hope. We're coming live actually from a past guest's house. So I don't know how long y'all have been doing this with us. This is one of the coolest to me though. 2021, right after COVID hit, we decided to do this type of virtual event where we don't meet in person, but we deliver a message to everybody at once. And Grant Pinkerton opened up his new San Antonio location to us to teach us how to trim briskets and slice briskets once they're done. I brought it up to Grant that we do this again out of his Houston office, and he laughed and said, come to my backyard and let's talk a little bit about how the backyard cook ought to be behaving. So we're out of the restaurant. We're in the backyard of one of the greatest barbecue mines in Texas. I don't know if you guys read Texas Monthly. Some of us probably do when the Texas Monthly top 50 barbecue restaurants get listed. But for the third time in a row, every 4 years they release it, Grant is listed as a top 50 barbecue contender. So I'm excited to be in his backyard. Right now, he's off camera babying a couple of rib racks that in a minute he's going to come back and talk to us about. Before that, we're going to talk with Mark Sangster. Again, if you guys remember some of our older events, Mark Sangster's been with us before. Back then, he wrote a book called No Safe Harbor. That book has been doing well, so he decided to release a second book. And we're going to talk a bit about what a cyber-conscious leadership strategy looks like. Before I get to that, for those newbies that are here today, y'all might be wondering why we do this at all. Let me quick introduce you to Center Technologies, and we can get into Mark's message around cybersecurity a little quicker. First off, we do these events no less than twice a year. A lot of our events we do are quarterly. We may be throwing in some extras this year. Seems like these are popular. Everyone seems to be enjoying them. So be on the lookout for some future events coming up. We're toying right now with a concept on doing a wine event. We'll be telling you more about it. We got one coming up that's an in-person, that's a UT tailgate for the A&M game. For those of you who are Austin fan or in Austin that are UT fans, feel free to join us there for that. We have a number of different events though on our events page that we are happy to have you attend and excited to see y'all and get to know you better. Next, if you don't know what Center does, we're an IT services company. We are a full-in consulting firm that really focuses on bringing three different things to our customers: an enterprise experience, personalized service, and local touch. If you've ever gone down the path before of looking for the right IT provider, you're going to find in our industry it's littered with two different types. One we refer to in-house as Chuck in a Truck. The Chuck in a Truck is a really good single IT guy, a sole proprietorship that is really good at knowing your business, but really bad at scaling with you, and even worse at not letting you feel the burden of new customers to them. The other one we get a whole lot of these too, are the national and global players. They're enterprise scale by all measures of tool sets, but they never know you. You're just a ticket in their system. Center believes by our focus in the Texas and Oklahoma territory and our current scale across 6 office brick and mortar sites today, that we are the perfect balance in the middle of small town feel with enterprise experience. So just to bring that back up, if you could do everything that way, have the amenities of the enterprise or big city, but still have a small town feel where you're not worried about what your neighbor's doing, that's a pretty good spot to be, and that's where we think we fit. So everything from managed services to cloud solutions, cybersecurity protection, IT consulting and delivery, and even business intelligence. We can take you down a path of what the right fit for tools and service looks like for your company. So if you haven't used Center before, please consider grabbing one of our account executives or reach out on the chat. Just say you're interested in learning more, and we're going to go ahead and help you by getting a meeting put together to start that consultation process. What you shouldn't expect from us, we're not paper flippers, we're not SHI or CDW, simply looking to be the reseller of whatever you already buy. Instead, we're looking to solve business problems by applying technology to those challenges. All right. Little unique today, we got actually some business partners that are sponsoring today's event. So I've got 3 I need to mention real quick. I think you're going to love them. One is SentinelOne. My guess is all of y'all know SentinelOne already, but that is the back end of our EDR, endpoint detection and response, and SOC for all of our managed services customers. So you buy on with Center, you get the value of everything SentinelOne and more, a SOC that's operating by looking at your logs and getting a feel of what anomalies may exist. Really a good space to be. Quick funny story, what kind of anomalies is typically the question I get most often? I was once looking at Bing. I don't use Bing usually. The computer started to pick up that I was using an AI tool, Copilot for Bing, inside of a search engine I don't usually use, sharing my screen over Teams with someone else having control. And SentinelOne decided that was a behavioral anomaly. It shut me down, took me off the network until IT was able to recognize that it was a false positive. No problem, I'm put right back on, I'm off and running again. Another partner, Augment, a company you likely haven't heard of, is a great organization that we use to help identify business email compromise before it ever starts. It gives us clarity and visibility into over 20,000 managed endpoints, over 100,000 managed Microsoft licenses to see risky sign-ins so that we can operate faster and get a potential breach addressed quicker. Lastly, Liongard is what we leverage to measure configurations and identities across all of the Microsoft stack that we manage. This is a really cool tool to be able to operate quickly in the event that there's a suspected breach. Reading logs is no one's favorite thing to do. So leveraging a tool like that and the AI built within it gives us the visibility to move quick, reading the right logs and making decisions fast. So we couldn't do events like this without these tools that sit behind the scenes of our managed services offering. I want to thank them each for helping us and enabling us on getting briskets out the door to each of you who are attending today and helping me be in front of Grant Pinkerton, a barbecue icon, to get to learn more about it. Now, throughout today's event, I got a lot of different surprises. Typically, I lay everything out, and we're going to make sure we stay on task, all that stuff. Not today. Curveballs everywhere. Just seconds before we went live, the power went out, and they had a crew of 8 right behind us working on power. Well, hopefully power stays on, but if we do have any mistakes around power or glitches, rest assured I have a team of people behind the scenes that are going to let us know when that happens, including our producer, Allie Boyce. Allie, I'm excited that you're on here today. Thanks for manning the Teams chat. Allie, how's it going?
Pretty good back here.
Excellent.
Guys, I'm excited to see how the event goes on.
I heard everyone's excited about meat sweats. Is that what I heard on the chat earlier?
We may have been chatting about that a few times.
Okay, perfect. Well, if you have questions, guys, put them in the chat. Allie's going to hear them, and she's going to interrupt us politely so that we can stop talking about the rambling we're doing and jump into what y'all want to discuss. So with that, let's get right into it. It's been years since Mark's been a part of our event, but Mark is here with us today, and I'm excited to have him from Canada remotely with us. Mark, are you on?
I'm on. Hopefully you can hear me. Yes or no?
Go ahead, try to unmute just to make sure, Mark.
I will mute now.
First glitch, and it's a real glitch.
There we go. Looks like it's live.
I'm still at the point in my ear of I'm introducing Allie. Guys, give me 1 second. I'm going to have to fix this in a different manner. If someone could tell Mark, we're going to call him and keep his computer on.
Okay, so it looks like the audience can see
and Allie
and hear
sent me his
me.
number again.
Yeah, everybody can hear me, right? So looking good. All right, tell you what, I'm just going to start for everybody.
Sorry, guys, 1 more second. We're going to be off and running again. Apologies.
I'll just start firing off here while, because it looks like everybody can hear me. So they'll catch up and work it out. I'm going to send Allie a super quick text, though, and I will tell her that all is good. All right.
Mark.
James, how are you?
Good. Leave your computer on. Make sure they can still hear you through that microphone. Is that okay?
That's okay.
All right. Sorry about that. To the whole team that's listening right now, apologies. We thought we'd done enough testing on this one. Obviously, I missed on it. So, Mark, great to have you. Thanks for doing this with us, and excited to have you on here talking about cybersecurity. I was mentioning that you joined us last time, right off the first book you released after the RSA conference. BEC was barely a thing at that point. What's changed since we talked last? You got a whole new life now?
Oh man, yeah. So since then, I worked with a large company called Lumen. It was another managed detection response company. We actually did a successful exit with another firm, and now I'm kind of doing a bunch of research and writing on the side. So first I published a second book called Cyberconscious Leadership, and you mentioned No Safe Harbor, and No Safe Harbor was kind of it was like this decade worth of material and stories and everything that I had that I kind of wanted to get above the boardroom, right? And I'd say, why am I having the same conversations over and over and over? And that was a way of kind of doing that. The second book, Cyberconscious Leadership, was more about other people's voice. So I interviewed about 60 people from all across the world, right? So practitioners, executives, intelligence people, in fact, people in the Ukraine and Afghanistan. And I wanted to kind of get a feel for, a 360 view of what was going on. And that was sort of the idea, right? Was to hear from those voices, the voices of experts fighting the good fight, but also the people who had been victims, right? To truly understand what is it like when you're getting shot at in a trench, who's really on your side, how simple is it, the advice that you see or that you hear regularly, does that really work in those kind of situations? Or do you find there's a bunch of gotchas that, don't necessarily get exposed and unfortunately got to learn those hard life lessons? So that's what I was really trying to get at.
Did you say shot at in a trench?
Yeah, well, metaphorically shot at and in a trench.
Oh,
however, a couple of the people that I did interview, one of which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, she was in Afghanistan, and she was part of Operation Pineapple, which, if you remember, that was getting a bunch of the sort of civilians and their families out of Afghanistan during the withdrawal. And then she was with the UN in the Ukraine, and she was sort of, I guess, like an observer, right? So the reality was she was really trying to figure out what was going on the ground, and how bad was it for the people living there, the civilians and so on. And so she certainly actually faced real rounds, real bullets. She was kind enough to, share what she learned through that and what she saw on the cybersecurity side of it as well.
Mark, what is the, there's a lot of drive that gets anyone to write a book, but you mentioned getting the conversation lifted up higher. What made you think the parallel between the interviews you did and succeeding and getting that lifted conversation? Can you kind of take us through that process? How'd you come to that conclusion that's the way to do it?
Yeah, it's like I said, you end up in these one-to-one or one-to-few kind of meetings, right? You're sitting in a boardroom, you're talking to execs, you're talking to friends, and having conversations over, like whiskey around a fire. And you're realizing that there's a lot of good there. There's so much sort of life lesson in it that is hard, I think, when you try to convey it in something like a short form version, right? Like a blog post or, something that has a kind of a shorter shelf life. And I wanted some people to have that kind of reference. And the other reason for that is also the kind of the barrier that we see between the technical world and the business world, right? So, there's so many times like these technical leaders trying to work with their execs who just don't know, they don't understand the sort of the risk parameters of it. They don't understand how do they translate those ones and zeros into the dollars and cents of their business. And so because of that sort of lack of language or vocabulary, that's often one of the biggest barriers that leads to these kind of attacks, right? So having something that they can literally hand them and go, you know what, read this, it's written for you. This is for C-suites and board members and leaders to understand, what it's really like. What would it be? What would it look like if we actually faced, let's say like a ransomware shutdown or a massive data breach or an operational shutdown, and what's it going to cost, right? In terms of, money, time, brand, and so on. And it's just a way of kind of, of brokering that conversation and getting those leaders to the point where they turn around to the tech people and go, yeah, okay, you scared me sufficiently. Now what do we do about it?
It's funny you mentioned it at the beginning that way. I can tell you Chris Pace, when he founded Center, It was 100% around that same topic you just said of using technology to solve the business challenges. His take on it is that technology is the center of every business, the only department all other departments touch. And you have to be able to translate it. You're right. You have to take really technical enterprise grade things and then relate it to the business impact and be a master at that in order to be successful. I think I'm on board with what you're saying. I've got customers who know that backups are an absolute necessity, but I don't know that they're capturing the value in the boardroom of speedy recovery. Does that make sense? I don't know that it's translating necessarily on why the investment.
Yeah, totally agree. So one of the people I interviewed, she was a senior executive in a manufacturing firm that was shut down by a ransomware attack. And this is a few years ago, so it was Conti. They're kind of gone now, but
sure.
You know,
well, they've reemerged, right?
Yeah, exactly. And she said it was like operating. What did she say now? It was like operating as business as usual, except by candlelight. And you know what they saw was that the systems that they had, they couldn't recover, right? They wanted to go for the green network, but in doing that, you suddenly realize that some of the legacy tech that you rely on as a core of your business isn't going to talk to the next generation stuff. So, you know, suddenly you're moving from off-prem, you know, Exchange onto Microsoft 365 and you're in the cloud and you're using Azure and you're realizing that these systems just won't talk. And in fact, for a long time, they operated sort of like, Noah's Ark, right? They had two of everything. They had the old system and they had the new system, and the old system was kind of firewalled off in its own world. And, the new one, they were literally doing like manual conversions and sort of translations because they're like I said, the old or could not talk to the new and vice versa. And suddenly you realize that regardless of whether you're the CFO or the CEO or whatever that title might be, you're all finding that every conversation is about technology at some point, right? And especially in our, I hate using these kind of cliches, but in a digital world, right? You think about our currency, the vast majority, 97% of our currency is moving as digital. And it's the same thing, right? Really, I think the new currency anyway is data.
That's a huge number. I had no idea it was that high. Sorry about the interruption.
I think it's just below 90 actually, but it's crazy, right? So, when you think of all these companies, like at the end of the day, even if you're making something physical, right? So let's take today, you're sitting there and we're going to talk barbecue, which is fantastic. Cause I love working the smoker, although I'm an amateur and I'm nowhere near at that level, but I always love those tips and tricks and lessons. What you see is behind it is a whole digital infrastructure. So you think about that ranch that raised that cattle, that got it on a truck, right? They got it out to the restaurant, that sort of farm to table model.
Mood to mouth,
a lot of times. Yeah, there's a lot of times where if that gets disrupted, digitally disrupted, you can have major delays and spoilage and waste. For example, I did a bunch of work with a winery out on the West Coast in Walla Walla in Washington. And that's what they were worried about, was that while, many of their systems weren't digitized, at the end of the day, them getting grapes harvested at the right time, and turned into wine and then bottled and then on a truck and then getting to a restaurant, that was critical. And of course, that's wine, so there's a little bit of buffer room, but you start getting into fresh food, what do they always say, right? Kind of the zombie apocalypse thing, right? We're sort of 3 days away from all hell breaking out when that supply chain gets disrupted.
I do love that topic, because even an 18-pound brisket, a Packer brisket that arrives at a restaurant, you're only going to serve 8 pounds of that. When it comes time to lost waste from trimming, from cooking, you're right. By the time it gets there, it's a lot of motion, and they wonder why brisket prices are so high. So let's pivot real quick so we don't get too far into barbecue. I know too you're a big green egg guy, so I want to make sure we have a little bit of time at the end about that. I want to get into the international stuff you were discussing earlier. You mentioned some Ukraine stories to me prior. Can you get into that some?
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk about, we can talk about things like the fact that we're in sort of like a hybrid kind of war model now, right? And in fact, I used to say like I think the Ukraine war was kind of the first big hybrid type of conflict where we saw both sides, using, going after infrastructure, right? Shutting down social networks, shutting down. In fact, I think I just read an article about most of the IPs registered to the Ukraine are now, I think it's something like 3/4 of them are sitting outside of the Ukraine. And that's because they've been bought and they're sitting in, DNSs in other locations now. So they've kind of lost control of a lot of that stuff. And so everything from the news right up to,
Mark, I read this morning.
Yeah.
Real quick, I read this morning that Iran's claiming credit on a True Social breach that just happened on a news source out of ours as well. So it's getting to the point with what's changing and evolving in the international war side's finally starting to impact some U.S. stuff more and more.
Yeah, we've seen this before too. So you were absolutely right. That's sort of another lesson from international conflict. Is one of them is that there's no civilians in a cyber war, right? War is cyber war, and cyber war is war. They're the same thing now. Okay. And the reality is civilians, or if you want to use that sort of concept, is gone. The idea of combatants and non-combatants. We're gonna attack an airbase, but we're not going to attack a hospital or a city center or something like that. In a digital, or sort of like in terms of cybersecurity, there's no such thing, right? So you're right. Iran may not be able to go toe to toe on a battlefield, but what are they going to do? We're going to see missile strikes into other parts of the Middle East, but we're also going to see things like retaliatory cyber attacks. And in fact, we saw that I think like 5 years ago when there was sort of a preemptive missile strike fired into Iran. We saw an uptake of cyber activity from ones that we thought we could attribute back to them. So I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And remember, a lot of those smaller nations like China and Russia less so, they're kind of funding themselves. Iran and North Korea and places like that. It's kind of part of their economy, right? Like it's sort of baked in. There's this assumption in the budget that some portion is going to come from that. And that was exactly, that's what, the Ukrainians were telling me. And beyond that, what they were saying is, from an economic perspective, is that they're extreme drivers. So if you live in an area of conflict, you can work for IBM, right? I'm going to pick a very generic tech firm. You will make 15 times more money if you are working in a group that is associated with whatever kind of cybercrime. And that assumes you get a choice, right? That's if we were to jump onto Bad Guy LinkedIn and decide where we want to work. But there's the other side of it, which is you have a talent or a skill, and someone in that area is going to come along and say, hey, we would like you to do this thing for us, accomplish this mission. And, your choices are you can get paid a lot of money for doing it, even if it's questionably ethical or moral, or, you can live the consequences of probably finding yourself somewhere in a ditch. And that's, so, whether it's an economic driver, I think there's also like, there becomes almost like a life and death kind of driver. And that's what they were seeing was a huge number of people, coming out of school with talent. And Russia, Russia put a lot of money into sort of science and technology and engineering and mathematics. So they have a strong background in that, and a strong aptitude. So they've got a deep skills base from which they can draw.
You piqued my interest last we talked about some negotiation stories. I get questions a lot from business leaders around if something does occur, what are the steps that take place? We talk a lot about IR. We talk a lot about what recovery really looks like, not just closing the gap, but rebuilding the environment. But rarely do we talk about the negotiation side. Is that a fun side for discussion?
Yeah, it is. So back to like in the book, I talk through that with one case, one executive, and that CEO was interesting because of course their company was a manufacturing firm. This is I'm not in any way sort of denigrating them, but the reality is a lot of times when you're a mom and pop or a sole proprietor type of business, you start small, you grow big. You are founded on old technology, and why are you going to change it? Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of approach. But he said, when we got into that in the shutdown, he basically said that, dealing with this really, you had to kind of self-manage, that you're on your own. Yes, the insurer is going to bring in an incident response firm. And the law enforcement gets involved. And yes, they may have a broker, like the insurer will say, look, we're going to go negotiate with the ransomware group or whoever it is. I guess their idea is that somehow they're going to talk them down or there'll be a lesser payment. But, at the end of the day, they're still kind of holding him accountable. But I think one of the big points he made is it is timely. It doesn't happen quickly. You get shut down over the weekend, you come in Monday or Sunday, you figure it out. It's not like even if you were just to pay the ransom, immediately say, hey, I've got the luxury of, I've got $5 million burning a hole in my pocket. Let's pay you now and figure out how to convert that into cryptocurrency and get it transferred to you. The reality is it is still going to take days, weeks, if not months or more to get up and running. Like I said, that company still not up and running, and they actually sold to a larger firm, and they lost about 50, 60 million on enterprise value during due diligence because this came up, right? That they knew about this, and that led to, you know, additional expenses, deeper dive, you know, more due diligence, deeper dives, all that kind of stuff that had to occur. But the one thing I'd say, if I could take away the lesson from him, was he basically said, you can't negotiate from emotion. You have to just look at it like it's any other business issue, right? So like if this was, you know, a hurricane that, you know, caused issues, or a supply chain thing, like, you know, the ship didn't make it, or there's tariffs and trade wars, or wherever the heck it might be, you just have to accept that those are factors you can't control. And then you have to think about it. So like he would say, if I had to, it was a $4.5 million ransom. You know, his point was like, look, if I got to pay it and I'm losing, you know, $700,000-800,000 a day, you know, that's a week's worth of downtime. I'm going to pay it, because if that's the cheaper way to get back to operating, you know, to sort of like back business as usual, you know, it's an unfortunate pain, but it's what I'm going to do, right? It's just like any of us, if our car breaks down and we need it to get to work, it might suck that we got to drop a couple of grand to get it repaired, but we kind of don't have a choice. And it's the cheaper.
It opens a door though to all new risks. Like it gets you temporarily better, but it's band-aiding a deeper problem. I'll tell you, there is something really cool about what you're talking about, where the business decision to not invest small amounts of money leads to a surprise amount of money that you don't know how to budget for. I've heard that before too. How do you budget for ransomware or a business email compromise? Believe me, there's a way to do it. So we can take people through that process. I love that you're talking about the negotiation though with organizations. We learned from some of our friends from our IR Jumpstart that's powered by Arctic Wolf Solutions.
Yes.
That those companies like Conti, they get disassembled and break apart. And they pop back up.
That's
and
right.
When they do pop back up, their motions are very similar to the negotiations of Conti, or whatever the parent was that they separated from. So surprisingly, or maybe no surprise, those bad habits, they don't die. They continue to operate in the same manner. So do you see that a lot still, where, hey, 4.5's not what they're going to end this at? We've seen this group before, or we know this.
So definitely, like, look, they even use, you know, they consider it like brand equity, you know, so it'd be just the way any sort of big Fortune 500 company would here, where it's, you know, yeah, I was with Conti, and suddenly we're like, oh, you work for Conti. Well, okay, that's a big deal, right? And now I move on to this other group, Scattered Spider,
Mom and Pop,
whatever it may be. Exactly. And so not only do you see the kind of the DNA in terms of like code that they're using, but you also see it in terms of the business practices, the way that organization is constructed. And that's something that came out in the, you know, Ukrainian war, right? You saw that sort of spat between Russian and Ukrainian members of Conti, who actually were exposing, you know, that they had a CEO and a CFO, and maybe it wasn't formal and they didn't have a corner office, but the reality was they had somebody functioning in that capacity, and they had, you know, business model, right? Like, how do we do our R&D? How do we, you know, what revenue streams are we, you know, are most effective, or bringing in the most capital, that kind of thing, right? So that's something that you remember, is they take it on just like we would. And it's a good way to put it. It's almost like if a group of small people, you know, you sell your company, and now you're like, hey, that's great. What's next? Well, you take that trusted, you know, kind of core that you have, circle, and you go off and you do something else. So you've already collectively, you know, kind of got that institutional knowledge, experience, trust, you know, teamwork, all that kind of stuff that you have. So yeah, like that's it, right? I mean, it's, you know, it's whack-a-ball, right? You knock one down. Every time I see the FBI or somebody says, yeah, we took down this group, or we took down their share site, right? Whatever it is, you know, another one is going to pop up tomorrow. And like, just read SentinelOne's threat reports, read Verizon's. You know, these groups continue to expand, attacks continue to expand. I think it was like 200 or 300 times the amount of, it was a 300x in growth of, say, like just business email compromise that we were talking about earlier, right? From 23 to 24.
That's a big number. I would agree with that. That is a cool story. I think that side of getting the leadership to know what that side is imperative to get them to understand the importance of a tabletop. Imperative for them to understand a tabletop, to understand preparation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right back up the chain.
And honestly,
tabletops, I think, are the most valuable tool that we have, right? Because it puts everybody around the table. They face a real world, you know, simulation of an incident that it could occur. And what it really helps them realize is that a lot of the decisions aren't technical decisions. There may be a technical act or task that has to be completed, but it will have the business impact. Back to my CEO who decided, the heck with it. I'm going to build a whole new operation. And while I do that, I'm willing to pay the ransom because that's the fastest way to get the old system up and running, right? That's not an IT call. That's the CEO, the CFO, and the board.
Hey, Mark, there's a chance that we're boring Allie. I can't tell if she's saying we need more exciting topics or if she's saying she has a question. Hold on one second.
Okay,
no
I think I heard her.
Yawning back here quite yet, but we actually have a question from Jacob Church. He was asking, do you see AI as an assisting tool or a threat to cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's
Not
perfect.
quite Ukrainian.
What a well-timed segue.
Yeah, exactly,
topic.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
AI, I think, is like any other tool. You know what I mean? So like whatever, a shovel can
like
be
a
used.
Screwdriver?
Or a screwdriver, right? Exactly, right? That can be, it can be something that's a productivity tool, or it conceivably could be a weapon. And it's the same thing. So with AI, I think where it's harder for us as people is that it's almost like we're going through these orders of magnitude increases in complexity, right? Less and less people truly understand it. Which means, we don't just have that kind of, street sense or common sense of, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it working or not? And so I think with AI, that makes it more challenging. Where AI, I think, is great is at looking at things like detections, right? So what Sentinel-1 has been doing as an example, right? So it can do a better job of catching the very subtle kind of attacks where they're doing things like living off the land. So, manipulation of remote administrative tools like PowerShell or RDP. It can also do a great job in accelerating security operations like SOC kind of work. So it can go in and, you look at that closed pool of data and it can look at, okay, every analyst, every time they see X type of event occur, how do they respond? What communications go to the customer? And so some companies have done a great job of actually going in and sort of auto-populating all those kind of reporting elements or collecting the forensics to create that sort of investigation report or micro investigation report. But I think the ultimate one, where it's going to get really interesting is where it starts to actually look at the metadata of security operations and say, all right, when I see an indicator of compromise, what's the next thing I investigate? And if it's positive, what's the next thing I do? So it actually starts to learn the process of the methodology. Right. Exactly. Like what does the police inspector do? And then I think that's going to continue to push it farther into the kind of the response side of security operations. And then on the Jacob, to your point, on the bad guy side, right, they can use the tool to do things like multiple different kind of phishing campaigns and analyze the information and look at what was most successful and what kind of language is most effective. I think that's with generative AI, it's sort of becoming a little more human in the way it speaks, right? It can use lingo, it can be colloquial. And so that makes it a little harder, I think, for us to disseminate legit from unauthorized, right? So you think about, you get an email and it comes from Allie and it's using some of the words she says. She doesn't say bye. She says, ciao or something, right? Italian. It starts to figure that stuff out. And I think that's where it's really going to get tougher because, one of the things we always kind of kidded around was things like, language barrier issues you'd see in these emails where there was, something was misspelled, poor grammar, things like that. Well, now it's getting to the point where that stuff's faster and smarter than we are. And, doing the same thing, like running attack simulations, it could run thousands of different simulations against a particular vulnerability or looking for vulnerabilities. And, in seconds or minutes, figure out which ones have the highest likelihood of succeeding. Whereas, you think of like a pen tester or an analyst, it's going to take them significantly longer and they never have access to that kind of database from which they could test. So AI, I guess it comes down to whose hands it's in.
Mark, all spot on. I think you wrote in your book, it's also a bit of an ego thing. Let me read from a book. Yep. Choosing to lead is about stripping away your ego in the service of something bigger. When I hear that, I relate it back to what we often hear, that AI is taking jobs. AI is actually going to need to be leveraged to enhance jobs, to push what we do today to further limits. Right. Otherwise, we're going to be squashed by the evil side of how they're evolving their code, picking their targets, et cetera, like you mentioned. So I love how you wrote that in the book. I'm going to pause real quick. Allie wants to interrupt again. Allie, what you got?
We have a very great question coming from a very eager attendee. Kind of pushing us back a little, I know. Thank you, Jacob, for setting us up for AI. Few steps back, why the move from Carbon Black to CrowdStrike?
For who? For everybody? For the whole world?
Why not? Start
Yeah.
there. Go to leadership. I know that's important.
So why make the move from product to product? That's great. Probably a deeper conversation, but a lot of these tools, in my opinion, once they hit that upper right target of the Gartner page, you're picking a product not based on tech always. You're picking it based on fit. I can tell you for Sentinel-1 has a lot better, more mature tools for us to manage multi-tenant in a single frame. So that helps us be better and more efficient and faster because we're one tool, one login. There's other reasons though, and why you'd want CrowdStrike or Carbon Black. And in our history, we've had each of those as partners at one point or another. Mark, do you have a preference on flavor of popsicles?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously everybody's got, good product, and I have to be careful what I say here, but I've done a lot of work over the last few years with Sentinel-1 and vigilance service. And yeah, I mean, what you're looking for, I think, as you said, sort of up and to the right in the Gartner Magic Quadrants, I wouldn't criticize any large country sort of, our company sort of a blanket criticism, but the reality is, right, it's the smaller, it's the innovating companies that are the ones who are coming up with what's next. And larger companies too tend to sometimes tend to focus on larger customers, right? So you look at where their revenue base is coming from, and then even things like licensing and so on, right? So, I think Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Defender, there are so many flavors of Defender that I think are fab. The problem is, depending on what service license you have, right, in your license level, there's kind of, good, better, best. And so I think people automatically assume, well, I have Defender as an example, therefore I must have the top tier of all the services. And you don't necessarily if you've got one of the, the sort of the small business licenses. And so that's something to be really cautious of. So I think ultimately this comes down to fit, right? You got to look at like, what's the gap in your business? What are you trying to achieve? And who's got the best, whatever it is, hammers or mousetrap to make that work.
Yeah, and then I'll mention too, kind of bringing those both together, it's hard to build your own SOC, but a SOC is needed for those EDR tools to be effective. It's hard to build your own AI language model. So what we do is we look for tools at center, like Augment that I mentioned earlier, that we enhance our ability through their AI. So I would say if I was in y'all's shoes, if you're choosing a partner and you're also looking for technology, choose your partner first, choose your technology second. You can't choose a tech that your partner doesn't know, in other words. Allie says she's got another question on the table. Let's go ahead and get it. Was that not a question?
Oh, no, we have a question.
Okay, let's hit us with it.
Mark, this may be one of the most important questions for you to answer to date. Where can we find Mark Sangster's book?
Okay.
Oh, hey, can I start with one there?
Go for it.
Mark, do you care if I open with that? Yes.
No,
You can get books in many different places. One place you can get a book is brought to you to your office if you accept a meeting with the Center Technologies account executive. So one option you have, if you like what you're hearing, you want more on it, we'll bring it to you. You put your name in the chat. We're going to record it. We'll capture it. And then we're getting books that we're going to bring out. If you're a huge fan of Mark, you're seeing them on the screen and you can't get enough of them, we'll autograph that book for you. I may forge it, but we'll ask Mark to sign them for us. And we'll get them over to you. We'd love to be that partner. Mark, you do offer the books in other places, though. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, all of your typical online vendors, right? Your Amazons and Barnes and all those guys. It's also available. Both books are available through those vendors as well. So
I noticed, that's my favorite place to go grab it is on Amazon. Easy to find. You don't even have to remember the whole title. You did get a little wordy on the title, Mark.
You know what?
Conscious leadership, a practical guide to protecting your organization against cybercrime. The
publishers always make you do this second title, and it's just like the subtitle, and it's pain in the butt. So yeah, I just kind of get down to no safe harbor and and cyber conscious leadership because it's easiest. And that's the one thing in the book I was going to say that we take away when you talk about leadership there is I've kind of been using this simplified framework, which is, cyber, right? CYBER. And the whole point is, the C is consciousness, understand the risks and the obligations, the kind of stuff we've been talking about. The Y is being yield, right? Yield to the situation, recognize not everything is in your control. You can't necessarily return to normal and, and identify what you can control and what will help you. And that doesn't have to be a major incident. That could be like, do I spend this little bit amount of money today? Should I invest in incident response planning and training now? Or do I just, kind of buy the insurance and just kind of wait till it happens? The B is be brave, right? Lead by example, adapt to incoming facts, embrace the change, solicit the dialogue. Like, you got to be a leader there, empower your people, right? So engage your team, listen to your team of experts. Those experts aren't all your employees. They can be your partners, like James and gang at Center, and then be responsible, right? At the end of the day, take responsibility for the circumstances. Nobody wants to hear when you say, well, it's not our fault. There's no way we could have stopped them. We had no idea they'd want to steal our information, our data on our customers, kind of stuff like that, right? We're well past those days. So, sort of lean into it, step into it. And this is what it's kind of about, which kind of goes back to the quote that you read, right? About you got to strip your ego and you got to recognize where you are and which side of the table you're sitting on and make the best choices for you, your employees, your investors, and your customers.
Last quote I'm going to read was one of my favorites. Regulations reflect threats of the past. By the time they are implemented, criminals have moved on to another paradigm of attack. We can't get enough of that one. That's really cool to me. That business owners come to us and say, we need to get caught up for X. They're not thinking about what they can't see. That makes total sense on why they can't. You shared with us some stuff about business email compromise last time we talked. We had not yet seen that go widespread. Is there anything that you would recommend the team on the call today be on the lookout for the evolution of where things are headed?
Yeah, business email compromise. And I was just looking at the data, actually. Texas is the second top state when it comes to the number of complaints and losses. So there's about 62,000 complaints and about—
we take the good with the bad, man. We're number one in everything else, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is not the one where you want to be number one. Exactly. And about 1.4 billion in losses. And that's just the stuff that's reported. So, I think the big thing to think about with business email compromise is it is far more prevalent and frankly, financially damaging than things like ransomware and other things that we, kind of, I think because of their nature, get the lion's share of attention, right? So train your people, have the secondary controls in place, right? You're not, you're not making payments. You're not transferring funds just because somebody told you so. And frankly, a lot of this is down to the leadership part. So you can't blame, right? You've got to be patient in the sense of, you might be frustrated that something needs to get done, but it's got to go through the checks and balances, because that's how these guys get in and get smart about doing this, right? They know that under human pressure, people will make mistakes, or they'll sort of cheat the system, right? And skip the steps. That's how it gets done. This is old school techniques. They're still prevalent. The reality is it's an incredibly profitable model for bad guys. So, where there's the money, they're going to come hunting.
Yeah, perfect conclusion. Guys, Mark has offered up a number of different things. Part of his love is consulting businesses, talking about what they're going through and helping out. If you're interested in the book, put it in the chat. If you want to go a step further and have Mark be part of your consultative approach as well, get with us, get with Mark directly. We can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him on social media, I believe. No, LinkedIn's your preference, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn's best.
All right. We'll find him on LinkedIn first, then go search the web for him. But he's been everywhere, from a published author to an expert on CNN about cyber attacks internationally. So we're so happy to have you be a part of today, Mark. I know you're a Big Green Egg guy. You recently did a brisket yourself. I hope we can pull some of this off to help you out in your own backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the invite. Thanks for the kind comments. And I look forward to further talks with everybody. And let's get to the meat and the smoke.
Let's get to the meat of this, right? I think so too. Let's thank you. I appreciate it, Mark. Let's not worry about a transition of any kind. We're gonna have Grant come up here right now. He's done this with us before, so I'm not too worried about going off script here for a second. But I can't tell you, last time we were in the heat working on raw briskets, and he was teaching us how to slice those. We may need to resurface that to teach everybody, should y'all need it. But again, a reminder, those of y'all who've done our 44 Farms briskets with us, or events with us, 44 Farms have been nice enough to ship those out to everybody. I'm excited to have that. Grant, do you want to join us? Y'all hold the applause. You can wait till later on that. Grant, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
We're in your house. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Man, this is exciting. So again, last time we were in San Antonio together doing an event similar to this. You've had a lot of change happen since then, at least a lot of awards. We've had more Texas Monthly Awards. That's fun.
Yes.
You had a lot of competition success lately. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I had a competition myself. You want to know what kind of success we had?
Not great.
Not great, man. We flopped We were in the Austin Rodeo Barbecue Cook-Off.
One of my best barbecue friends won it.
Really?
Yeah.
I wasn't on that team.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk more next time, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Maybe you need a ringer.
Yeah, that'd be good. We could do that. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit is what's gotten you into all the competition stuff lately?
I think, when you cook as many salt and pepper briskets as we do every day,
Yeah,
and
sure.
you're cooking the same food day in and day out, man, I just love the variety of competition barbecue. I'm a really competitive person by nature. And so what better way to indulge that than to spend like 7 hours in a trailer sweating your butt off and then turn a box of food into 6 people who might not know really anything about barbecue and let them judge you.
We're going to talk about judges in a minute. That kills me. So I'm a backyard cook. I like my big green egg. I think I've shared that too much with the group that's on today. Mark Sangster in Canada, he's cooking on the same thing, a big green egg. Going into competition, I felt like just do what I do naturally in my backyard and share it. And it's a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
There's a planning side to it, a team.
Right.
There's a ton of logistics to make sure you're following the rules of the event you're at.
Right.
Are you more on that planning side, or are you coming in just to cook?
Well, our team, at least when we compete in Texas, consists of one guy. You're looking at him.
Okay.
My wife and daughter come to most of the contests with me these days. And my wife is there to tell me, man, you have 5 minutes to turn in, or
keep you on schedule.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then also like bringing in a second set of eyes to look at your boxes before they go in is always a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing it alone, but man, we've done this barbecue thing together for so long. We work really great. Sometimes you need an extra set of hands, or you don't need it, but you sure could use it, right? So
what's the minimum number of people you could get through an entire event with if y'all were to really force the work?
One.
You could do a whole on one.
Yeah, 4 meats, no problem.
I'm out.
And a lot of it is a rhythm. So
Okay.
I'll even practice at my house. We'll do a 4 meat practice cook here. I'll wake up and man, I have the same turn-in boxes. I have everything. We'll start cooking on the pits here at the exact same time. I have turn-in sheets, and I go through my entire cook from start to boxing to submission, and then we leave them all on a table and try them 30 minutes after we box.
And when you do well, you win all your money back?
Man, a lot of times I'll just donate it back to whatever charity it's supporting.
I found that if you're going into events and competition to make money, you did it wrong.
Yeah, you're not gonna make money doing that if you're really good and like we sell our sauce and seasonings and you're winning with them because we use all of our own stuff. Man, that's a good way to monetize your competition stuff. But
sure.
One, we get a lot of content that we can use for our social media doing competition barbecue. 2, it's a whole nother network of people that I treat it as a networking event. I make a lot of connections and great friends in that side of the industry.
Makes sense.
And 3, build your brand nationally, because that web is a lot more interconnected than the national restaurant barbecue scene. I mean, I don't really know anybody from Tennessee barbecue scene. I know one guy, but I know a lot of guys in the competition scene in all those states. So it's almost a better network for me.
Well, recently you did the Houston Rodeo Barbecue Cook-Off, and y'all did well there.
We did. This is our 3rd year to final. So we finaled in ribs twice and chicken once. We reserve champion chicken, and actually we finaled 4 times. So we finaled in dessert too, and actually won our first world championship in dessert 2 years ago.
I don't know if I remember the dessert part. So there wasn't the cookies, was it? My favorite cinnamon.
It was a cheesecake.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. And,
what happened to those in the restaurant? Sidebar, guys, I have a bone to pick with Grant for a minute. We used to have those cookies that were delicious at the restaurant. We need to quickly make those back.
Well, we couldn't. We had to discontinue those because the guys who worked the pits at night ate them all. And so they actually are a kind of process driven to make. And so we'd have originally my mom would come in and make them.
Yeah.
And then we'd have a baker was doing it, but she'd make 3 or 4 dozen of them. And we'd come in the next morning and half of them would be gone, and I'm
he thinks it was the cooks. It may have been me coming back too often.
Yeah, I should have known.
Yeah. Those are delicious. All right. So then you went to Memphis in May, which the group may not know that event. I feel like everyone knows Houston Rodeo Barbecue Cook-Off. Talk about Memphis and Maine a little bit. Is it a bigger
Are most of
cook-off?
the viewers from Texas?
Texas, Oklahoma, maybe a few outside. I heard we had a New Yorker.
Memphis and May is, as far as like prestige, is same level, if not. I think it's a longer running event than Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. So there's, in my opinion, there's 4 majors. You have Memphis and May, the American Royal, the Jack, which is in Lynchburg, Tennessee, at Jack Daniel's Distillery, and then the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
Okay.
And
Do you do all 4?
the Royal, I've done in the past. I have earned my invitation. It's a invitational. And the Jack is extremely hard to get into from Texas because there's only like 35 team contests and you have to win your way in.
Okay.
And here, if you win a state championship qualifier, you get what they call a bung, and it goes in a lottery system and they pull a team out to represent Texas.
Okay.
And here there could be 50 teams in there.
Okay.
Man, you got a 1 in 50 shot of going. Takes some guys compete for years and never get the draw.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll continue down that path. Tell more on. It's one of the majors, Memphis in May.
Yep.
You've been a few times now. Y'all had a lot of success there.
Yeah, we dominate the beef category there. We've won that, like, we've straight up won it like 3 of the last 5 years, and then placed second one of the other years.
Now they say beef category. Is that a brisket submission, or does everyone get creative now?
We do brisket.
A lot of beef cheek in there.
No, a lot of people do steak.
Okay.
A lot of people do brisket. A lot of people
throw
do
a steak in there.
Yeah, but a lot of guys, until they've had a really great piece of brisket,
Yeah.
man, you can really blow their socks off with a great piece of brisket. And obviously, it works because we're like whooping ass over there doing it that way.
Your sauce placed well too.
Yeah, sauce. This year we rolled out a new sauce. It was our sweet sauce.
Yeah.
Which we rolled out into the restaurants, and people are using it like 2-to-1 to the original, which is a great sauce too. The original sauce won second best sauce on the planet at the American Royal. So that was pretty great.
This planet?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, not Mars. So
Yeah.
lots of entries.
That's awesome.
And then this new sweet sauce that we came out with this year, which we used all competition seasoning. It's kind of been my secret sauce the last while. It won 3rd place, best overall sauce, and then we used it on our chicken wings there, which won.
Yeah.
And I think on something else that we won. So that one is really like, man, it's kind of taking over the competition scene by storm. We have it on our ribs here today. So
nice. I would like to talk more about sauce and barbecue. There's kind of a weird sin there that people say good barbecue doesn't need it, but I'm getting waved down like y'all are waving me down heavy on here. Do we have big questions coming?
Speaking of sauce, do we have a big question for you? Question of the day. Do you have a website that sells your seasoning or sauce?
I do. You can either go to pinkertonsbarbecue.com and click your way through to a shop, or you can just go to come.com. So I recommend just going to comeandeatit.com. And
Comeandeatit.com is you'll find it on social media too. You can follow the more the competition stuff that Grant's doing on that Come and Eat It social media sites as well. I'll add to y'all, if anyone's excited about the book. Are you excited about the book, Cyber Conscious Leadership? If anyone's excited about the book and wants a copy of it, we'll bring you one. If anyone's excited about that sauce, the new sauce, I'll bring that to you too. So put your name in the chat. We know about you. And if we do, we'll make sure we bring both the book and that sauce, or just the sauce or the book back your way. So excited to get that in everybody's hands.
Also, don't know if this is a trade secret or not, but 2-part question. 1, do you prefer dry rub or saucy? Second question is, do you inject your brisket? And if so, what is your favorite injection?
Let's come back on injection. Let's jump right into the sauce though, because I would tell you that it used to be, at least 5 years ago, sauce was almost an insult to barbecue. So what's your take on this? It's an enhancer for you?
Yeah, I'm gonna flame James for this take, but like realistically, I feel like that's one of those like fake barbecue hardo things. Like, man, barbecue doesn't need sauce. It's a lie. It's just something people say to one up other people about who's the bigger barbecue buff. But one of the things that I really learned with like traveling throughout the United States was that great sauce complements great beef. And there's no reason, if you go to fine dining French restaurants or Italian food or whatever, man, they're using gastriques, they're using sauces, they're using all this stuff. So who are we to tell the best chefs in the world that a piece of food isn't made better when you're balancing the acidity or the sweetness or all those kind of things? When it works together, it's really great. And then as I traveled through the Southeast, I learned that there's as much like familial heritage in people's sauces as there is in the way they're cooking. And to me, that was really cool. And that really got me deep into the sauce game, was that like an amazing sauce is like a secret recipe, right? Man, everybody knows how to make a pork butt and everybody knows how to make a brisket, but like your secret sauce is something that can really set your barbecue apart. And when it really works with how you make the thing, man, it's a beautiful combination.
I am going to update my Instagram profile name right now to Fake Barbecue Hardo.
Yeah.
That is my new nickname from now on. Pretty excited about that. Thank you for
You're
coining that
welcome.
one. Yeah. That's a great take on it. I believe you're right. I don't know if you've ever had your own burn ends at the restaurant or not, but they don't need it.
They don't need sauce, but if you take the sweet sauce, what I do is I'll take the burn ends and then I'll put a dab of sweet sauce on it. And man, just having something with some sweet and acidity with the fattiness of the burn end,
Yeah.
man, it just takes it to another level. It's just ridiculously good.
Yeah, many of y'all have done whiskey events with us too, and he's not wrong. Even great whiskey sometimes needs some Coke.
Sure, I'll let you alone on that one.
It's a cardinal sin. No one would want to do. But the concept here is really cool. He's taken life lessons and family recipes and enhancing the great flavors that the simplistic rubs and everything else are making for that meat. So I love that take.
You know, I think another thing is when you go to these competitions, it's completely blind. It's in a box, and if you don't sauce your meat, people say that they don't like sauce on barbecue, but then when you go churn in stuff with no sauce, you do horrible. So this is all blind. They're just people off the street. These aren't trained judges. So that lets me know that at least 85% of the people out there, man, they actually do like sauce with barbecue.
Yeah, turns out it's all a lie. They mentioned the injecting briskets. Do you ever do injections?
I always inject my briskets. I inject all of my competition meat.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of great lines out there, injection lines. The injection and I brine my chicken too. So I brine everything in chicken fried barbecue game over brine. I brine my chicken in that, and then for a lot of my injections, I use LC barbecue products.
Okay. LC barbecue products for injections. And then when you do an injection, do you inject cold, room temp, warm?
Well, I always make them room temperature because when you're adding phosphates, which binds to the molecules in the meat and holds the moisture in, they do a better job of distributing throughout the when it's not cold. When it's cold, they start clumping. So I usually mix it warm and then I chill it, and then I'll inject it into my meat at whatever temperature I want my meat to be when I put it on the grill. And that's like another trade secret that I use to cut my cook times down.
Were you momentarily regretting sharing that one?
No, I don't mind. I don't, you still got to cook it.
Yeah.
You know, I actually always let like my ribs, I have a 3-hour cook on my ribs.
Okay.
And the reason I have such a short cook is because I'll always let my ribs come to like almost room temperature before I put them on. I want the meat to be very relaxed, but I also, when cooking competition, I don't want that meat to have to be in the heat any longer than possible, pushing liquid out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So I find you'll probably, hopefully with the ribs that I bring out today, you'll bite them and you're like, man, this is a lot. We don't do that at the restaurant. I only do it for competition or at my house.
Well, so that's one thing we're trying to accomplish today, guys, is that competition barbecue is different than most backyard cooks. Maybe not when you're Grant practicing for competition, but it's definitely different than restaurant cooks across the board, not just at Pinkerton's, but across the board. You'll hear people say that competition barbecue is just different. So when we get a little bit closer to that, it should be right on the corner. I want to keep honing in on what's different than what you do normally at a restaurant. I heard there's a question already.
I mean, we're a few questions away from opening up our own barbecue shop.
I'm ready.
I gotta know, what's the brisket rest time?
I like to rest my briskets for as many hours as they cook. That's kind of a pretty good rule of thumb. So for competition, my brisket is a 5-hour cook, or 4.5 to 5 hour cook. I cook extremely hot. at the restaurant, we cook around 275, and I rest my briskets for about 12 hours.
So for the backyard cook, do you recommend 275 if you're doing your first brisket?
Yes. Like, I think 225 is the biggest fallacy in barbecue, and I think it gets people in the most trouble, because if your temperature gauge isn't quite calibrated, and let's say you want it at 225, but it's really cooking at 210, 205, man, you're not getting anywhere. And you're just kind of extending the amount of time that you're going to mess your food up. That's why I honestly, I think bark formation is better at 275. I think moisture retention is better at 275. But the most important thing is pick a temperature that your pit likes to cook at and keep it there, because I always think of my food as a sponge. And so you take the liquid and you fill your sponge up with liquid, and as things cool, they constrict, right? So when your temperature goes up, it opens up, and when you, that's like you unringing a sponge, and as the temperature falls, it's like you squeezing the sponge, and then when it goes back up, you open it up. So every time that happens, you're basically wringing out your meat. So if you just want to cook at 300, just pin it at 300 and let it fly at 300.
And then learn how to manage look, feel.
Everything just happens
there.
quicker. You know, you can, I'm in a restaurant business that are cooking at 350 degrees. And people are saying their briskets are cooked low and slow. They're not telling them this, but almost all the competition guys I know cook their briskets at 300, 325.
I like 275, but I remember as a novice, I am a novice, but as my beginning days, it was really hard to be anywhere near consistent when it was flying that fast and hot to see it enough to know what I'm looking at. I needed to go slow just to be able to see the way the brisket changes.
Right.
I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I would get used to doing 275 as well. I think that's a great place to sit. You do move faster, and your rest can be longer even than 5 hours. Your rest, I've rested briskets for 10, 12 hours.
Yeah, overnight. I have a Breville air fryer inside that's like one of those ones you put it in. It has a warming feature. And you can leave your brisket wrapped in there overnight. Come back the next day, eat it for lunch.
Eat it for lunch. Allie, was there another question?
Oh, is there another question? These are just flooding the chat. It's actually kind of hard to keep up with. Do you prefer a specific breed of cow for your brisket?
We cook an Angus brisket. And
do you care if it's black or red or blended? The old
I just care, to be honest, I don't really care what kind of cow it comes from. I just want really marbled brisket. Especially for competition or if I'm cooking at my house. Obviously, at the restaurant, we get prime grade Angus, and man, you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. But when I'm cooking for my family or for a competition, I'll cook a Snake River Farms gold brisket. So they have two levels. They have a black and a gold. I like the black for like eating with my friends and my family. And then when I'm going to a comp, I'm cooking a gold level. I love it. But it also, like my injection and all that kind of stuff, it profiles to that gold Wagyu.
Yeah, the richer flavor.
Yep.
That makes sense. Allie, keep going. Do you have any more questions right now you want to throw out?
You know, I don't know if this is a question or not, but just to put on your radar, we actually currently have a KCBC judge.
KCBS judge.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say.
In the chat?
Yeah, currently right now. Yes.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So he could probably chime in on this one, but I was floored doing my first competition to learn the process of judging. It's impossible in what we prepared for to get a piece of chicken in front of them that's going to taste decent at all. By the time it goes through the process of plating and then carried and then stacked and then retabled and then someone to finally get around to it, well, I bet you we had rubber.
That's why you need phosphates.
I need a lot more phosphates in my life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Allie?
You know, obviously we're in Texas, you know, you're pitmaster of Houston, the pitmaster, forgive me, of Houston, Texas. With Texas obviously being your number one, what is your second best barbecue style?
Barbecue style? Yeah. All right, I'm like this is going to be pretty nuanced answer, but like I have heavy barbecue influences from Mississippi and like South Memphis.
Okay.
I'm probably the only guy in this state that has influence from that region, but I started cooking with some guys from there, and I just think how they think about pork is really badass. It's kind of like talking to Texans about beef, and it really opened my brain to just how wrong like we normally get pork.
Okay.
And
If you're speaking of a quality of the pork you're getting?
No, the process.
The
So
process of
I'll
doing-
break it down as simple as I can. Texans try to cook pork shoulder like we cook brisket. And when I go to other regions in the Southeast, the reason they struggle with brisket is they try to cook brisket like they cook pork shoulder. And it kind of goes back to the fact, like people say, oh, good barbecue doesn't need sauce. Well, when you're cooking pork, the sauce is a very, very important part of how you make that pork shoulder actually taste like great pork shoulder is supposed to taste.
Sure.
The acidity in the wrap you use, the mop sauces, the finishing sauce, the finishing dusts that when you go to places down there that they're chopping the meat in front of you and adding seasoning right in, and how crazy that can just really brighten flavors and change the complexity from. I always tell everybody, man, people's pork in Texas is just bland as hell.
Yeah.
Like it's bland. It's rolled into a ball. It's stuck on people's trays. Like it's super unimaginative. And pork can be so much more than that.
Do you wrap it halfway through?
What? The pork or like anything?
Just anything.
I don't wrap halfway through. I usually wrap it more later on in the process. I like to make sure I have good bark.
Yeah.
I like to get somewhat a little past the stall because I don't want so much liquid going into my wrap.
You taught me that if you wrap before you like your bark, you're not going to like your bark.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
So that's my only advice to the team. I think on a Cliff's notes would be, if you look at whatever you're cooking and the bark's not formed, don't wrap.
Man, at the restaurant, in backyard cooking, man, I'll wrap my brisket at like somewhere between 170 and 180. And I usually think that it sticks pretty good at that point.
Let's do a segue. You got some ribs you got on right now.
I do.
You're gonna probably move locations a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do a little segue if that's all right.
Sure.
We'll pass you over. If we can get his mic muted, that'd be awesome. And let's bring in a new guest. So more surprises, guys. Unexpected when we started planning this event is Sergio Manchaca has been making my knives for a long time. This is a blade that I've shown before on our events. This is my brisket slicer. Sergio made this one and has been featured in a number of different things recently, like Texas Monthly. Sergio, when they did this, I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was on just the craft of the blacksmith that goes into making those blades. Featured you with a nice photo, some of your blades there. You're here today to help us with a gift for Grant and giving him a blade. But I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
In from the Panhandle. That's a haul.
That is a haul.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
Hope everything's going well.
If y'all follow him on social media, that's the intro. Hey, y'all, on every video. Can't get over. That's awesome.
Before we get started, we do have to take into accord a very special day that I missed yesterday.
Oh, boy.
So happy birthday.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Guys, my birthday was yesterday. I'm now 43, which means we can stop celebrating my birthday.
Did Center Technologies give you that company Corvette?
Yeah. Everyone who turns 43 at Center gets a vet. Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly what happens. Hey, I was hoping you would tell everybody just a quick plug on what you like to do, how it started as a side hustle a little bit, and what it's grown into. Do you mind giving a little story?
I can go ahead. That's good. I love to talk. So, and it's dangerous because I got a picture of myself right there. I like looking in the mirror. Anyway, I started, I guess I knew I was going to make knives right around 2013, 2014, but I really got into it in 2015. And I got into making knives because I like knives.
He's got you on that camera.
Okay. Well,
that's his way of trying to
That's
tell
my
you.
better side right there. That's everybody's waving at me. I was fixing to wave back. So I started about 2015, and I just really couldn't sell a knife. I mean, nothing was working. I was making knives for the wrong reason. I was making knives as a tool, like Bowie knives, self-defense knives, and I couldn't get it. So through a lot of prayer and just thought, I remembered the times I have been in the backyard cooking with my family and just enjoying that time. And I said, I'm going to make barbecue knives. And I reached out to Robert Sierra, and I said, would you try one of my knives? And he goes, absolutely. And Robert's got a ton of my knives, but he really liked them.
What did he nickname his knife?
I don't remember.
The something Zilla.
Oh, Chopzilla.
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 Robert Sierra is a big menacing figure. You know Robert Sierra, Grant? Robert Sierra is big. Grant. He's got a cool logo with his giant mustache. And I remember seeing that knife for the first time, and he's on Instagram or something using it. I was like, that's cool. I need one of those. So that's actually where I found you. Is that same time? You brought one made kind of uniquely. You're gifting the Grant. Will you talk about that for a little bit?
Sure. This is a hand forged. When I say hand forged, like it's like this hand. So hand forged out of a farrier's rasp, and I believe it's 12 inches long, 12-inch blade. Handle is box elder out of North Texas, and yeah, I love making them. And as you can see, everybody asks like what these are. These are the hammer marks where like my actual hammer touched the blade. So
you're all about that reclaimed steel. So that was a rasp you said that you turned into a usable blade. I don't know that you remember what this one was.
That's
probably
a plow disc.
A plow disc?
Yeah.
So this was a plow disc turned into a usable blade.
Texas.
And then you use oftentimes wood from the land that you can find that there's a story behind every knife.
That's right.
And that's what's really cool to me about this. And so this one for Grant, you handcrafted that he's hopefully going to use with future meets as well. But he mentioned what I saw in it, and it looks like fish scales all on the side of it. I think that's such a cool look.
I chose the blue handle because, James said, do something special for Grant. And I said, well, I really don't know Grant personally, but let me look on his social media. Grant has a lot of blue shirts. So I said, it was either going to be blue or it's going to be pink because his daughter is always in pink. So, yeah. And so that's how this knife came about. The rasp itself is from Tioga, Texas. And my buddy supplies those. So that is used on Texas stallions or horses, whatever you want to call them.
We gotta turn that off. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Here, I thought you muted it. So let's get back. Grant, are you back with are you ready to rock?
I'm gonna bring the rigs over here.
Let's segue a little bit. Here's what I'd like to do. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We're gonna heckle a little bit as Grant brings these in and ask questions.
They look like James's ribs.
In the meantime, we actually have a quick question about knives.
Yeah.
What style do you prefer to sharpen your blades? Whetstone, machines, store-bought little plastic knife sharpeners? What are we thinking?
I make my knives out of carbon steel. So carbon steel, I chose that because a carbon steel blade is going to grow with you. It's going to stain with you. It's got its own character. When I sharpen, the reason I choose carbon steel is because I can use a whetstone, concrete, whatever I need to use. But I prefer keeping the blade sharpened with the whetstone, and then you're going to strop it. If you strop often, you won't have to hone as much. You won't have to sharpen as much. But know the difference between all three: stropping, honing, and sharpening.
And we're gonna talk more about those. In fact, we may do a whole event with Sergio on another date, so we'll bring him back for some of those topics. Yeah, go ahead, Allie.
We actually have a trade deal for you.
A trade.
What are your thoughts on this? I'll trade you a Texas flag cutting board for a brisket knife.
I know who that is. That's Chris Patillo. They're nice cutting boards. So, Grant,
is it worth the trade?
What's that?
Is it worth the trade?
Pretty good cutting board. I can show you one.
Where it's at.
Is Grant muted still? That was a good comment. Grant, the paper cutting boards are where it's at. So we can have a cutting board war here afterwards. As Grant, as you're gloving up, what are your thoughts as you pull these off the rack? What are you seeing?
I'll be pretty happy if I see KCBS 9s to whoever that judge is out there. I'd be pretty happy if we're fixing to go box for a comp with these ribs. I mean, they're color spot on. I don't know what camera's on, but
I'll show you in 1 second. Can y'all show which camera he's looking at? That guy right in front.
All right, I'm going to give him a tight shot.
Uh-oh.
Let's see if I can drop them all off here.
So higher. There you go.
Not too close. There you
Yummy.
Now,
Yeah, beautiful cherry red.
if anybody's in the Central Houston area, now's your time to get in an Uber and haul over here.
All right, I'm gonna go work on these. So, man, you wanted me to just do it like I would be boxing for a comp, or?
Yeah, just keep talking through what you're seeing. Like, to be honest, I know every rack's not the same, but is this gotten to the point where there's actually no interpretation? It's exactly as you expect.
I mean, it's muscle memory for the most part, but you know, at the same time, I have you know, I like to experiment. So sometimes things turn out a little different than I thought. Yeah. I had one rack of ribs at a comp this year. Man, I tried to do something different, and I went to taste my rib, and man, it tastes like Chinese food, like orange chicken. I'm like, oh, I'm screwed, you know. But
well, why don't we do this? Did you trim those into the St. Louis style that they're in, or did you buy the rack like that?
No, I actually just went and took these from the restaurant.
Those are usually brought
regular St. Louis style. Once I get them, man, I'll cut the last 2 flat ribs off. I'll peel the membrane, and then I'll kind of come in and cut the top. And one thing that I do is I'll cut the ribs. And for a lot of guys in the backyard, it's way easier if, you know, we do it this way. So I always have maple syrup and honey mixture that I'll wipe on my cutting board, just as a little touch of added flavor.
That makes sense. I always keep maple syrup and honey with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, probably in his purse. And so we leave it like this, and that also helps keep the sauce that is on the top and the bark nice and set, so that it's not coming off on the cutting board. So then I'm going to take the same mixture, and I'm going to wipe the back side of my ribs with them. And then I'm going to take a little seasoning of whatever I use, grind it down into powder, and I'm going to sprinkle it on the bottom of the ribs. So we're not going to get any visual that that's there, right? And then I'll take the first rib, and I'll kind of make a pilot cut here. You guys want to come try this?
Sergio, get in there.
This is basically the rib burn end.
Oh wow.
Sergio, do you make knives like that?
Well,
Give me ideas.
everything is very tender for competition.
Oh my god.
Pretty good. Everything's really tender for comp. So,
What part of the unicorn is this from?
the back part,
What is the ratio of maple syrup to honey? Is it even?
50-50.
The painted rib has been a thing you've done at the restaurant for a long time. Your shirts originally had the painted rib concept on it. This is a kind of a trademark for you?
Yeah, I'm going to run and grab one other thing of sauce.
Hey, you know what? We'll see in a little bit. All right. So during this quick intermission, I want to remind everybody that it's as tasty as it looks. Grant's back. We can put the camera back on, but this is the hard part for me to replicate in the backyard. Most of us are going to probably ask, I'm wrapping my ribs. How am I getting all this done with it? And by the way, they're coming out with bones falling out. How are you controlling the tenderness from getting too far?
I like a rib. I like to take them to about 209 or 210 to 211 if I'm doing it here. So I always make these cuts. So I cut the very tips off so that they have a really nice uniform look. Every rib is the exact same length. And then I'll come in and I'll touch all these up. And then on the side of the ribs, I'm going to come in with that honey maple syrup. And I'm going to just kind of lock in all the juice on the sides like that. So,
wow.
You want to try one?
Yeah, I'd love to.
That's our sweet sauce.
That's the sweet sauce.
Sweet sauce with a little
Grab
bit
one
of
off the
our
top, or
red
you want me to take
Yeah,
this
man, grab one off the top, get up to close on the camera, and,
Oh yeah, I don't mind doing
and
that.
bite
at all.
it so they can see how juicy
All right,
that
which
rib
camera
is.
can I come at, Chris? Moving quick. All right, ready? Guys, this is the best footage we've ever had. Are we ready for this?
It's
All right.
James in the wild.
James from State Farm.
Do you see the juice dripping
I'm
all
so
over his
envious
face?
of you right now.
Golly. That's fantastic. You
That's
want- you
why. That's why you didn't walk at the Austin Rodeo.
We were so proud of our ribs. They failed so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. I'm gonna get a napkin. Keep talking.
All right. So, the other rack right here, I think this rack's even better than the first one.
Of course
And
you do.
that's why we fed James that one.
When you prepare a box, you use the greenery.
What?
Do you see pictures of boxes being delivered with greens inside? Some parsley or something that they're using, some lettuce. Do you
This is
flake
gonna
all
be a
that or
really
just
nice
put those in
rib.
there just like that?
Which one of the girls was the one that said that she liked the ribs at the restaurant?
Allie said she
That
ate
was
9
me.
ribs in one sitting at your place, which I don't get.
Oh, but actually,
This is your time.
you don't understand how many nights I've been dreaming about this. I've been telling everyone.
All right.
This is a dream come true.
Squeeze it out. You're on camera now.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
your first actual comp rib.
Guys, this is the best day of my life. This is awesome. It's insane.
It was
This is
so
really
good.
good.
5
This is
star.
phenomenal.
Yeah. So, what about other restaurants and stuff? Have you ever been impressed with any other ribs in your life? You ever
Alright.
gone anywhere and said, "Hey, this rib's got something going"?
At restaurants?
Yeah, sure.
Uh,
Or competition. I don't care either way.
Man. Oh, yeah. Competition, I've had some ribs. Damn, that's a good-ass rib.
It's a
I'm
good-
stuck.
But
You're good. Oh,
But-
you're good.
the nice part is, a lot of the guys in the comp circuit, they're pretty open about talking to you about what they did and sharing stuff. It's not as secret.
What a change in 15 years about how everybody's so open about how to do things. And it's kind of a, hey, here's the recipe. If you can figure it out, go do it.
Dude.
It's a way it just falls
no
off the
cooties,
bone so
man,
easily.
but that's going to be worth it.
Well, guys, hey, Allie, jump back on the computer. Let's do 1 or 2 more questions if they have them. And then let's start wrapping this up so I can eat more. Grant, that's amazing.
That's so good.
What?
James is never going to eat ribs at the restaurant again. He's going to keep showing up at my house.
Unannounced like today.
Yeah.
What do you look for when picking out a rack of pork ribs?
Yeah, man, that's what drives me insane. I hate picking out ribs.
Same
Okay,
here,
so what I look for when picking out a rack of
Right.
pork ribs is I want marbling and I want size. So I'm looking for St. Louis spares that are 4 pounds or more, and I want a lot of fat in that rib. I'd rather trim some fat off than have to try to put moisture in.
And
But
4 pounds is
thickness-
hard to find. Sometimes in HEB, they're 2.8, 2.8, 3
Believe it or
sticks.
not, I go to the grocery store about 5 times a week, and I look every time I'm there. And if there's a 4+ pound rack, I take it and I stick it in my freezer. And I stash ribs all year.
This is
long
gonna be
for
my
that.
new hobby.
Yeah, you're gonna pull your weight on the team now.
We have someone here who lives in an apartment with no grill.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on using a sous vide?
Sous vide or a George Foreman.
Man, I suggest making some friends with somebody with a grill. Like, I don't really know how you make good ribs in a sous vide. Like, you can make them tender, but it's just going to taste like boiled pork.
Right.
Like at the end of the day, how are you getting your barbecue flavor in there? Man, it's just really hard,
Backyard cook style, I've never painted every rib like this. This is going to be something new I got to try to figure out how to do. This is
Well, why
awesome.
does everybody got to rush to eat everything? When you're with your friends and you've been cooking all day, man, just cut the rack of ribs up and just start playing around with it. Like, cooking the barbecue is the most fun part. And so you're trading, man, get you 4 or 5 sauces out there, start painting with different stuff. What I put on the ribs is 2 parts sweet sauce, 1 part of our sweet vinegar sauce. And I just think that it makes a great combination.
Yeah.
They're
Thins it
nice fatty ribs. the acidity with the vinegar sauce really helps kind of cut through some of that richness and the fat, and the sweetness and the heat and the pepper notes and the sweet sauce really make it taste like barbecue, you know?
Kind of bringing it back to competition, what garnish do you use for the box?
If in Texas, we can't garnish, but if we're doing KCBS or something in another sanctioning body that allows it, we'll use kale. Yeah, parsley's a little tedious, and I just think that the kale boxes can kind of come together a little quicker, and I think they look nice too. And so then we'll take it and I'll spray that the kale with like a duck fat or a Pam, and that way it stays nice and shiny and looks wet.
So, guys, we're going to start to land this event now. I think we got a lot of people to thank. So, if y'all want to chime in with more questions, we'll get some answers back to y'all. I know there's a bunch on there. I'm getting signs from the marketing team if we can't end this yet. Here's what I'd like to say. Maybe we stick around for a bit unofficially, but I think the real thing we're probably going to be able to pull off here is we'll take those questions and get some Q&A back with Grant electronically. See if we can't figure out a way to get those back. I'm getting signs they're stabbing. So I'm guessing they also want Sergio's answers. So that's great. I'm already thinking about another event we could do talking about knife making, the whole side of the blacksmith side of it. So let's maybe put that together as well. If y'all have enjoyed the day, let us know. We need to hear from y'all on what's working, what's not. So if you could put that in there, that'd be great. The other thing that they want me to tell y'all is I think we're going to raffle off a knife. So we're putting something together to make sure that somebody walks away with some of Sergio's work. So we're gonna talk about that. The last piece of this is a significant thank you to everyone who's joined. Without this many members that are getting on and enjoying our events, it'd be impossible for us to do these fun, creative IT events. Who thought IT would lead to us talking knives and slow smoked meats and competition barbecue? So thank you all for being a part of this with us. Second, I want to thank the sponsors today, SentinelOne, Augment, and Liongard. We couldn't offer the security approached managed services that we offer without you guys powering us in the background. So thank you all for sponsoring this event, enabling us to be able to do these fun things. Sergio, the drive from the Panhandle, thanks, man. This is huge. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And can you let whoever it was about that cutting board know?
Chris Patillo, we're going to get you on touch for sure.
Get me in touch.
Can we do one more thing before we go? Can y'all put Texas Sage and Forge or social media already in there? Okay, great.
That's what we were going to ask. It's perfect.
What do you want to ask?
That's what we were going to ask. You beat us to it.
TikTok and Instagram, best two places?
TikTok, Instagram, best place. Instagram's the best. TikTok's just for fun. So, yeah.
Well, guys, thank y'all for doing this with us. And again, we will try to get more answers to y'all's questions out as fast as we can. Thanks again, guys.
And keep an eye out for our events page. We'll be having very similar events like this coming up in the future soon.
Awesome, Allie. Appreciate it. Thanks.